take the firearms first and then go to court.
As a trans person, we're almost always talked about and never talked to. Decisions are made for us, even by supposedly well-meaning individuals. Our loudest advocates are almost always cis, and in the rare times when we are elevated, it's almost always the most well-off amongst us, or those most willing to be a pick-me for the establishment. It's those trans voices not willing to rock the boat that get the talking stick. I am not one of those people. This video is probably going to piss off a lot of people. I can already tell that. But you do need to hear it. This video isn't necessarily for my trans siblings. You already know what the rest of this video is going to be. That being said, perhaps you can get some well-needed catharsis from it. Nor is this video for the maggot pieces of shit that always seem to be summoned the moment anything trans gets mentioned. No, this video is addressed to some of our supposed cis allies. If it doesn't apply to you, then you know who you are. But some of you need to wake the fuck up. You're in action, you're parading protests, and your damn team sports mindset behind politics is going to get us all killed. If you think Gavin Newsom or Pete Buttigieg would make an excellent president, or if you think the midterms are somehow gonna still fucking save us, then this video is probably for you.
The shit's going down, that's right here, right now, on a political train.
You already know about the shooting in Minneapolis. I don't need to rehash it. Nor do I wish to give that piece of shit detransition Nazi indoctrinated mass shooter any more attention than they've already received. Except to say that they at least blamed trans people in their manifesto for indoctrinating them to transition. Oh, and for the victims? Well, society has long since decided that the victims of any mass shooting don't actually matter beyond being a convenient political football to throw, or an easy coffin to surf. It's just blood sports on both damn sides, and it's fucking disgusting. What is new, however, is a recent DOJ leak that indicates that the Trump regime is looking into ways to strip trans people of our right to keep and bear arms. While this is terrifying enough as it is, it's the way they intend to go about it, by making the determination with a department policy change that we are mentally ill. That is probably the most horrifying. That's just the surface of their argument, because when they say mentally ill, what they're really saying is mentally defective, which is a distinct legal category with many frightening implications, even in times of due process, even for those society has already deemed worthy of it being used against. The phrase, adjudicated as mentally defective, stems directly from that imposition. It's a terror couched inside of the clinical-sounding language of a perverse legal system. But what's hidden in the legalese is the tools to not only strip you of your ability to own firearms, but to violate your fundamental human rights. As it stands now, under federal law 18 U.S.C. 922 G4, if you're adjudicated as a mental defective, or if you've been involuntarily committed to a mental institution, then you're barred from the possession of any kind of arms and ammunition for life. That includes things like knives and swords, body armor, tasers, pepper spray. Once you're adjudicated by the judge, your name goes into the NICS background check database. And the only way to get it out of there is through an overly complex process that's designed for you to fail. Anything to dissuade you of being able to make the attempt. It's just like healthcare companies denying your claims. They know that they put just enough of a barrier in front of you, you're not going to appeal. And the next thing that usually happens is a guardian or conservatorship is appointed to you. In quote-unquote normal cases, this is usually a family member. But if no family member is willing or able to take on the duties of caring for you, the state steps in and either appoints a stranger or appoints itself and claims ownership of you. You lose almost all control over your life and effectively become a child in a legal sense. And as a consequence, you're incredibly easily exploited. Remember what happened to Britney Spears? Kind of like that. Someone else, not you, gets to decide where you live, where you spend your money, what medical treatments you can get, your ability to have a bank account, if you can get married. In many states, you lose your right to vote. Your jury service eligibility is gone. Professional licenses, vast swaths of jobs. If you're an immigrant, you can become barred from not only becoming a U.S. citizen, but from even entering the country itself. And medically, once the state deems you as defective, involuntary treatment is absolutely justifiable by your guardian or the state. This is how you end up in a care home and sterilized against your will. And here's the thing, even though this is all just supposed to happen with due process, often courts will just rubber stamp the adjudications. People get stuck with already overworked public defenders, and families often use the process to gain control over your assets and benefits. Judges, not being doctors, usually will just defer to whatever the medical judgments are made by a doctor. And this is all in times of due process. Now imagine a sudden definition change of what it means to be adjudicated. Since its inception, it's strictly meant to have a judge's determination. But what if a simple diagnosis was enough? Think about what this means. The state would be able to legally remove your rights without even the pretense of a trial, and they wouldn't even need any new legal tools to achieve it. We already have long let them have it. All they needed was the will to abuse them and the facilities to enforce it. In the past, we had the evils of institutionalization, and we phased them out for ill-funded and overworked care in nursing homes. This is where you go when your family can't or won't take care of you. Except these homes aren't free, not even close. Usually your assets get spent down below $2,000, and you're thrown into Medicaid. And once you're there, often you're forgotten by everyone but the staff. And this is in times of normalcy. As a former care home worker, I've seen the implications and heard many stories that I simply can't legally or ethically really mention. Nor are they my stories to tell. I can't speak for the victims, but I can hold a microphone for those who can speak for themselves.
Being held in a psych ward comes with an almost total loss of freedom. In many cases, you cannot leave the locked hospital unit until a psychiatrist says you can. And now another local patient has come forward to share her story of how she says she was held against her will.
Good job, bud.
Sarah Guarino cherishes her freedom and her life after being locked in a psychiatric hospital in March.
I felt kidnapped.
The 31-year-old from Royal Oak says she suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder and insomnia. Sarah says a breakup, nearly losing her job, and intense fears she would be homeless led her to consider committing suicide in March.
I was having what I would call a panic attack. I didn't sleep for a couple days.
Recognizing she needed help, early in the morning of March 13th, Sarah called 911. Royal Oak police took her to a crisis intake center where she met with mental health professionals. Once she finally got some sleep there, Sarah says she felt better.
I kept asking, how long am I going to be held? They said maybe 2 or 3 days. And I said, that's too long. I don't know if anybody's at home with my dog. I need to go back home.
But Sarah says she was then transferred to Stonecrest Center Psychiatric Hospital in Detroit.
I was called out of the room where I was sleeping and told to get into a stretcher. I'm agitated, I'm confused, I'm asking questions like, what the hell is going on? And I basically got told, you can stop asking questions and calm down, or you can get doped up and made to calm down.
At Disability Rights Michigan lawyer Simon Zagata says if you're a voluntary patient and you ask for an intent to terminate mental health treatment form, the facility has to release you.
They could let you go that hour, but at the very least, within 72 hours, they either have to let you go or start that court process.
How hard was it to get this intent to terminate from them?
Very hard. I asked the doctor for it. She said that if I did that, they were going to open up a court case.
A court case means making you an involuntary patient where a judge could order you to stay 30 days or more for treatment.
His wishes and those of his family ignored. He's been placed in a conservatorship by Ventura County. Fox 11's Gina Silva has a story you'll see only on Fox 11.
Be out of here soon. We're trying. I told you I'll keep my promise to help you. Okay?
92-year-old Howard Rose has a single wish he's expressed to his family again and again.
I don't want to be confusing. I just want to go home and die in my own bed.
It's hard because he begs to come home, and I'm powerless. There's nothing that I can do right now.
That's because the county of Ventura has placed a conservatorship over both Howard's person and finances, even though his family is pleading to bring him home and care for him themselves.
9:30 at night, and we were watching TV, and all of a sudden the 2 sheriff cars pulled up with their lights flashing, and first thing we thought, something might have happened to one of our kids or one of the grandkids or something, so we run out there, and the guy actually asked for me. He said, "Are you Donald Hall?" I said, "Yes," and he says, "I got a deposition here that says that you're mentally defective, and be a deposition that they had to take my pistol first, and then they followed me in the house and watched me get it out of the drawer and give it to them, and then they went out and they come back in. They said, "Now, do you have any long guns?" And I said, "Yeah, in the gun cabinet you walk by." So they took every one of the long guns and they wrote them all down, and they confiscated them too. My shotguns, 2 shotguns, 2 rifles, and 2 22s, I think it was. Like I said, and all the while they're doing that, they said that we never did this to anybody, that they didn't know why they were doing it. And I said, well, I don't know why. They must have thought I was really wacky or something, you know.
Trump has long since puffed his chest and called to reopen the asylums. RFK wants to have work farms for the mentally ill.
And I have a very good idea of what works and a vision for what we need to do in this country. And we need to make addiction treatment easy, simple, cheap, and that's what we need to build here. And you know what I would do as president is I would decriminalize marijuana. I will make safe banking laws for people who are selling it, but I will tax it federally, and I will use that money to build these healing centers in rural areas, depressed rural areas all over the country, where kids can grow organic food and eat good, eat well, heal themselves spiritually, physically, and emotionally.
Beautiful model.
And not only for fentanyl, but also for the many, many kids who are now stuck on SSRIs and are suffering other forms of depression. We need to start healing our country. This is going to be my Peace Corps program. And my uncle had the Peace Corps. I'm going to build these rehab centers all over the country, these farms, healing camps.
Be voluntary. But his framing raises ethical red flags. By offering the program to those convicted of drug offenses, it blurs the line between rehabilitation and coercion. Critics have drawn parallels to historical labor camps, where forced work was justified as reform. Examples like the Soviet Gulag system and China's re-education centers show how such programs can devolve into exploitation. Without clear safeguards, Kennedy's proposal risks repeating these failures.
These are concentration camps, by any other name. And they want to put me and the rest of my siblings in there. After all, if there's no one capable of being appointed as a guardian, the state's going to be the one that steps in and makes the decisions. And this is the part that's probably going to hurt if you think you've been a good ally. You've probably been permissive of all of this. With your silence and ignorance of how we've treated the disabled, you've tacitly approved of their suffering this entire time. And if you do, and when you do speak up, the very words and arguments you use betray your unknowing acceptance of a controlling and fascist framing of things. You've absorbed it from the wider cultural norms. It's not your fault. After all, if they supposedly can't take care of themselves, they're mentally ill, right? And if mental illness is scary, or they might be a threat, never mind the fact that mentally ill people are far more likely to be victims of a crime, but oh, you don't care about that. Not when it's a useful talking point, right? Not conforming to what the majority sees as normal is a sign of dysfunction, right? So obviously, someone should be able to make the decisions for them. And they want to do the same with trans people. If you've ever said trans issues, transgenderism, trans ideology, transgenders, or biologically a man or woman, you've drank from the fascist narrative Kool-Aid at least at some point without realizing it. These are all words that have been astroturfed and injected into the cultural zeitgeist by decades of fascist propaganda. For example, the term transgenderism is used to equate transgender people with an ideology to dehumanize us. Trans issues is used much the same way as a Jewish question was in the past. It's meant to frame our lives and existence as something to be debated, as if it's a conversation to be had between the wealthy in a ballroom, a little trifling affair, not human rights. More nefarious, though, and something I've heard a lot of supposed allies use, is the term biologically male or female. This is used and popularized by the right to reinforce the false idea of biology being a static, unchanging binary, instead of an active process, that there is something essentially different between the sexes down to the chromosomes. As such, trans people are framed as pretenders that will always be biologically X, instead of the messy reality of sex being changeable and far more complex than a base genetic code that your cells pull from to develop the rest of your body. There's a reason HRT works. Your body already has the instructions to make it happen. And if it didn't, if sex worked the way the transphobes claim, it simply wouldn't. Nor is the term all that descriptively helpful. Just use cis and transgender. Like I said, none of this is accidental. It's marketing. And every time you repeat these words and endorse them, you reintroduce the framing to achieve their political goals, which is something not exclusive to just trans people. The disabled have long since been vilified and dehumanized with our language. And all this is necessary just to get us to the point where a leak like this would be led to crickets from a democratic establishment that is perfectly fine with so-called mentally ill people from being disarmed. So, when the maggots say that we're mentally ill because of our dysphoria, which is not true, but truth is dead, it's easy to let it slide and ignore it, or briefly talk about it without the urgency or mindset this moment demands. If your first response to hearing about the leak was to hypocrisy post about the NRA and gun owners, it's indicative of your lack of presence in the reality of what's to come. Simultaneously, many people on the left have absolutely no earthly idea about firearms or firearm laws, yet talk like they do. And it shows with a lot of the coverage I've seen. When the maggots lie and say that mentally ill people are already banned from owning guns, they accept the premise. But again, that's just not what the Gun Control Act says. And the sad thing, the really fucking deplorable part of all of this, is that the 2A community has come out in far stronger support of my rights at this moment than the vast majority of the Democratic establishment. How the fuck is the NRA of all organizations outflanking you people? While some of you might have been smugly talking about the NRA not reacting to tyranny, when are they going to rise up? They actually have held to their supposed principles, even though they're long since just been complacent on many other issues related to gun rights, and they're basically just a slush fund, but that's neither here nor there. The thing is, it's not because they or any other gun rights orgs actually give a shit about trans people. Many of their membership and donors are just as transphobic as the evil bastards at the Daily Wire. It's just that they understand the implications. They know what comes next. And it's not just the NRA. So many gun rights advocates have come out to bat for us too. Even some of the most bigot, asshole-ish worms of the 2A community can understand what can come from this. So why can't you? A few videos ago, I argued that we're at risk of experiencing another Kristallnacht. I'd like to revisit that moment. Do you remember what led up to it? Kristallnacht, when the Nazis rounded up 17,000 Jews and dumped them on the Polish border? How Herschel Gerspan's family was included among them? And how his revenge in assassinating Ernst von Roth gave Hitler his excuse to incite a pogrom? Of how the Nazi media framed the assassination as proof of organized Jewry conspiring against the Reich? Of how the Jews were inherently violent? The year was 1938. Hitler had been in power for more than 5 years at that point. The Nazis had already long made use of laws created under the Weimar Republic to target the unwanted. For example, the Reich Law on Firearms and Ammunition of 1928 required permits for purchase only for authorized persons, and created a registry system. It also allowed the police to revoke a permit at any moment. So when Hitler came to power in 1933, police were already able to weaponize the law to revoke those permits. And the courts willingly gave them warrants to raid the homes of Jewish families to disarm them. Then came 1938, with the passage of the German Weapons Act. Gun rights were expanded for the loyalists in the party, for government workers, and for those with hunting permits. Permit periods for ownership were extended from 1 to 3 years, and the legal age to purchase was lowered from 20 to 18. Yet manufacturers were still required to maintain records, and these records, as well as the permits, would continue to be weaponized. Nothing in the law at the time specifically targeted the Jews. They had expanded gun rights for the desirable, and it was until that day after Kristallnacht, when the law was officially changed to specifically strip the Jews of the right to own arms, ammo, and things like swords and knives across the board. When people in the 2A space talk about Hitler taking the guns, this is what they mean. Well, at least some of them anyway. They're gesturing towards the way an authoritarian state will use existing laws, registries, and records to selectively disarm a despised minority. For a demographic of people who are usually incapable of understanding systemic issues. Now look at what we're currently going through. Trump doesn't need to pass any new laws, doesn't need to build a registry. His people have everything he already needs. There's Palantir, DHS, FBI, ICE, FLOC, Medicare, Medicaid. The credit system, data brokers, cell records? Need I go on? He has vast troves of personalized data on every single American and non-citizen alike. Hitler only had paper documents in a compliant system. Trump has Hitler's wet fucking dream. And as such, the Trump regime has numerous ways to achieve what they want. This is just one way it could possibly occur. The important thing to remember, though, is the courts won't save you. It will start with the Department of Health and Human Services reclassifying gender dysphoria as mental illness. Inherently makes someone dangerous to themselves or others. They will use official reports that are pulled out of their ass to justify it, just like has been done with the Cass report. Then, the DOJ will get involved. They will issue a new legal opinion after a bullshit 90-day comment period to redefine what lawful authority means in 34 U.S. Code 4911, and what adjudicated as mentally defective means in 18 U.S.C. 922 G4. The DOJ will claim that any medical entity that accepts federal funding, which is pretty much all of them, is a lawful authority, and that their diagnoses count as adjudication. No more courts required. Next, the ATF will publish new guidance, informing FFLs of the requirements. Even if it weren't for background checks, FFLs would be disinclined to sell items, even legal ones, to openly trans people, as any violation would risk their license and livelihoods. Even still, the FBI NICS background check will be updated from various records to include my name as a prohibited purchaser. That is all they need to do to achieve their goals. Just a few strokes of a pen and a waiting period. And while you might think that this is an unreasonable and impossible, we've already seen the state radically redefine the letter of the law to suit political aims all the fucking time. Time after time after time. This is exactly the playbook they used with bump stocks under Trump's first term and pistol braces under Biden's. It's a bipartisan practice. They've always done it. For years, the ATF said these items were legal, only to change their minds from a political whim. Overnight, millions of people became felons for previously legal pieces of plastic. Eventually, both got enjoined by lower courts and struck down, but we can't count on the courts to do that this time. They won't save us. Since then, the standards changed with Trump v. Casa. No longer can the universal injunctions be issued by lower courts. Injunctive relief can only be given to the plaintiffs of the suit, meaning if this happens, every trans person in the US would have to individually bring suit to the government and wait years, with our rights being continually violated as the system drags its feet as it always does, unless it benefits corporations, but I digress. Next comes enforcement, and here is yet another part you probably won't like. Red flag laws passed in blue states are going to selectively be used against us. Local law enforcement, working in conjunction with federal authorities in Trump's neo-brown shirts, will utilize already existing records to issue ex parte orders. That means you don't have to be present before the court for the order to be enacted. Or to put in Trump's terms, sure, you can appeal, but the process is, once again, needlessly complex and designed for you to fail.
Take the firearms first and then go to court. We have to do something very decisive. Number one, you can take the guns away immediately from people that you can adjudge easily are mentally ill, like this guy. You know, the police saw that he was the problem. They didn't take any guns away. Now, that could have been policing. I think they should have taken them away anyway, whether they had the right or not. A lot of times, by the time you go to court, it takes so long to go to court to get the due process procedures. I like taking the guns early, like in this crazy man's case that just took place in Florida. But take the guns first, go through due process second.
Despite this being a blatant violation of your Fourth and Second Amendment rights, since it's a civil case, the courts don't have to give you a public defender, meaning you have to hire an expensive lawyer, or get one to do it pro bono, or you can attempt to fight the judicial system alone. And just because these laws are in blue states, doesn't mean that they won't fall in lockstep. Those of us who are visibly trans are going to be the most risk Those of us who are visibly trans are going to end up being at risk for immediate enforcement. To believe that you're safe just for being in a state like Washington is foolish. When you have people like Pierce County Sheriff, to believe you're going to be safe just for being in a state like Washington is foolish when you already have people like Pierce County Sheriff Keith Swank asking his public followers if trans people should be banned from owning guns. Never mind the decades-long proven track record of the far-right infiltration into local police forces. And even if the police refuse to comply, nothing's going to stop the DOJ from just using their own resources to enact their policy. Again, all of this doesn't just stop at me being disarmed. As I said, once you're labeled as defective, guardianship usually follows shortly thereafter. And if no one steps in, you become a ward of the state. And then you get institutionalized. After all, you don't get the right at that point to decide where you get your medical care or live. The state decides. It's not that far of a leap to say that this is their long-term goal with me. While it'll take more time for them to gain consent among the masses to push beyond our disarmament, no authoritarian state has ever disarmed a minority and only left it at that. Of course, in the end, it won't look like concentration camps to the normies. Of course, in the end, it won't look like concentration camps to the normies. Of course, in the end, it still won't look like concentration camps to the normies, even as ash falls upon their sheepish, intellectually lazy heads. Oh, I don't do politics. Fuck you. Seriously. Fuck you and your entire family for burying your head in the sand and acting like you can't just not involve yourself. As if it's a fucking hobby that you have the choice to not partake in. Politics will find you too. Once the legal machinery is up and running, it'll be expanded to include other so-called undesirables. Anyone who could possibly be a threat to his regime will be swept up in it. Are you black? The fascists think you are an inherently violent and mentally unstable race. And while I certainly don't have to tell you that, it's literally the same thing they're saying about us now to justify what they want to do. Are you a homeless veteran with PTSD? Well, you're trained and dangerous. So into the camps you go. A protester? A journalist? Remember Trump derangement syndrome? He doesn't call you insane or a supporter of terrorism to sound funny or cute. He's manufacturing consent with his base to have you eradicated too. It will come for you. How many times do we have to paraphrase Martin Niemöller's First They Came for you to actually get it and not just blindly mouth the words as if it's a fucking magic spell? Trump's been laying the narrative groundwork for years. And while I don't want to say this right now, this is a perfect segue to today's sponsor, Ground News. Ground News is an app and website that combines news from around the world in a place so you can compare coverage for every news source. You can see if they have political bias, how reliable their reporting is, and who owns them. They even have a blind spot feature that highlights news disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. So go and take a look at the link in the description to check it out.
Fuck this shit's going down, that's right here, right now. The political drain, just the news you need.
Now where does this leave us? What is there to even do when the courts are so very clearly captured? The DNC is such a feckless, controlled opposition of an organization. Well, it leaves us exactly where we were before all this. Because like I said, none of this is new, just the enactment. You've long since given government control over your rights for supposed safety. Firearm laws are just one example of many. Every time you give the state power, it's just going to get used eventually to harm the most marginalized people in society. So for starters, you can stop advocating for new gun control laws like yesterday, at least until the fascist threat has subsided. Once this is all over, we can go back to fighting each other over it. But for now, you have to wake up and understand your place in history. You can't ever hope to be ready for what's to come if you continually refuse to see the moment for what it is. Don't wait until they start going door to door before realizing you needed to prepare yourself in your community. Preparedness has never just meant having guns, beans, and rice, contrary to what some of the most bloviating online prepper types might say. While it's nowhere near enough, we've already seen how a well-organized community can change the calculus of fascism. How many people have been spared ICE's bullshit because the community got together and said, go fuck yourself. You need to be that person for somebody else if you were able-bodied. And even if you were disabled, there's a place for you in the fight. But you can't be that person unless you take care of yourself in all aspects of life. Take your health seriously. We need you to be of strong mind and body as possible. Fascist trained today, did you? And trust, I know how difficult this all can be, especially when you're living in poverty. I've had to radically transform my life to live by these words. And even then, it's hardly been enough. Because if there's one aspect of preparedness that gets in the way for many, it's money. Or rather, the lack thereof. It doesn't make it impossible, but it does complicate things. Trans people are among the poorest demographics. It's hard to be able to resist or even breathe when you can't even afford rent or to eat. Money, just like firearms, can be a force equalizer. If you're cis and you've the disposable income to toss on a DoorDash order that gets people kidnapped by ICE, you've got the money to help out your neighbor. Stop wasting it on donations to orgs that don't actually care about your safety. Put it directly into the hands of trans people around you. We need it now more than ever. Whether it's to stockpile our medication, to pay for our rent or food, or arms, it matters little. Every tiny bit's gonna help. And if you want to help us at the Political Drain Out specifically, there are some links in the description or something somewhere on screen. Maybe if I'm good and behaved, Drill Sarge will put mine in here too. Lastly, at least for now, I know a lot of you think of yourselves as being a good ally, but these good intentions aren't going to stop fascism. Waving signs in predetermined areas doesn't create change, and it amounts to little but a gigantic virtuous signal in many cases. Your posts aren't going to spur action. It's all performative. And while a little bit of performance can breathe energy into a movement, it's not how you create change. A much better use of your time when you can't be out there blocking ICE from leaving a facility, or scaring the piss out of your elected representatives by simply showing up, is just to be a little bit more introspective. Instead of posting, ask yourself where you've gotten your beliefs in the first place. Where did the very words you use enter your vocabulary? And who's controlling the narrative those words invoke? Whose shape are you framing? Stop pretending that language is nothing more than the words that you use. It's a battlefield, and the fascists have been winning. To sum it up, get ready, get armed, and interrogate yourselves constantly. Now, if you've managed to watch this far, and you're a maggot worm, or a federal agent, I do have some words for you too. And I'll keep it short. Stack the fuck up. Live forever or die trying. Live free or die.
Follow us on all these things you see here, and our link tree is in the description. Maybe even get some merch.